Hello, everyone. This is Gregory Muna, aka Master Moo, and this is Art is the Church of God the Creator, which we say it with a smile, but we say it because we mean it on whatever level those words mean anything to you. Art, God, Creator. And so today it is a chilly April Sunday morning in New York. Today is Sunday, April 19th. We had some hot weather, but it's unexpectedly cold today. And also I want to celebrate the fact that April is Poetry Month. So I'm trying to put those together. April is Poetry Month mostly because of the traditional commemoration birthday of Shakespeare, and later in the month, closer to April 25th, maybe next week, we'll be probably looking at Shakespeare's sonnets. But I wanted to look at the general theme of April and springtime in poetry, and perhaps particularly Sundays in April, and maybe particularly chilly Sundays in April, in the transition from winter to spring. So I've chosen 4 poems that look on that from different angles. The first poem I'd like to look at takes place on a Sunday morning, and it doesn't mention, well, it does mention April. April is mentioned, but it could be any Sunday morning. But I think it's particularly relevant to Easter season. Sunday morning. Sunday Morning by Wallace Stevens is a poem consisting of 8 sections, 8 stanzas, 15-line stanzas, which are a kind of modified rondeau or sonnet form, although it's really his own form. They're blank verse stanzas, which don't have any regular end rhyme. But where there's a general, there's a mixture of meters and these, but it's sort of a generalized iambic pentameter. Sometimes it's anapestic, and he uses techniques of modern poetry, slant rhyme, internal rhyme, anaphora, assonance and consonants, rather than dependence upon. Although there are the occasional repetitions at the ends of lines, there are refrains and so on and so forth. He unifies the poem with imagery, nature imagery of fruit, birds, the seasons, the sun, water, and it's generally a meditation on life and death. The central figure of the poem is a young woman who is half waking up on a Sunday morning, and she's trying to decide whether to enjoy her Sunday morning at home or whether she's going to get up and go to church. And she's resistant to the idea of going to church even on Easter Sunday morning because for 2 reasons. It seems to her to be a procession of the dead. She views it as a kind of a death cult, beginning with the fixation on the death of Christ and all of the martyrs and all of the death that's taken place in the name of Christianity, and particularly in the Holy Land, referred to in the poem as Palestine. And she, over the course of the poem, she looks at this from different angles, and then ultimately she chooses life without the afterlife. She considers, the pros and cons of belief in an afterlife, and eventually she rejects a belief in the afterlife and chooses to live fully in this life without any supernatural belief beyond that. The ultimate conclusion is there is no world but this world, and this world is enough. Okay, so let's just read it, and again, if you have your Wallace Stevens text in front of you, let's read it together. Part 1. Complacencies of the peignoir, and late coffee and oranges in a sunny chair, and the green freedom of a cockatoo upon a rug, mingled to dissipate the holy hush of ancient sacrifice. She dreams a little, and she feels the dark encroachment of that old catastrophe as a calm darkens among water lights, and the pungent oranges and bright green wings seem things in some procession of the dead, winding across wide water without sound. The day is like wide water without sound, stilled for the passing of her dreaming feet over the seas to silent Palestine, dominion of the blood and sepulchre. Part 2. Why should she give her bounty to the dead? What is divinity if it can come only in silent shadows and in dreams? Shall she not find in comforts of the sun, in pungent fruit and bright green wings, or else in any balm or beauty of the earth, things to be cherished like the thought of heaven? Divinity must live within herself, passions of rain or moods in falling snow, grievings in loneliness, or unsubdued elations when the forest blooms. Gusty emotions on wet roads on autumn nights, all pleasures and all pains, remembering the bough of summer and the winter branch. These are the measures destined for her soul. Part 3. Jove in the clouds had his inhuman birth. No mother suckled him, no sweet land gave large-mannered motions to his miffy mind. He moved among us as a muttering king, magnificent, would move among his hinds until our blood commingling, virginal, with heaven, brought such requital to desire. The very hinds discerned it, in a star. Shall our blood fail, or shall it come to be the blood of paradise? And shall the earth seem all of paradise that we shall know? The sky will be much friendlier then than now, a part of labor and a part of pain, and next in glory to enduring love, not this dividing and indifferent blue. 4. She says, I am content when wakened birds before they fly test the reality of misty fields by their sweet questionings. But when the birds are gone, and their warm fields return no more, where then is paradise? There is not any haunt of prophecy, nor any old chimera of the grave, neither the golden underground, nor isle melodious where spirits gat them home, nor visionary south, nor cloudy palm remote on heaven's hill, that has endured, as April's green endures, or will endure, like her remembrance of awakened birds, or her desire for June and evening, tipped by the consummation of the swallow's wings. Part 5. She says, but in contentment I still feel the need of some imperishable bliss. Death is the mother of beauty. Hence from her alone shall come fulfillment to our dreams and our desires. Although she strews the leaves of sure obliteration on our paths, the path sick sorrow took, the many paths where triumph rang its brassy phrase, or love whispered a little out of tenderness, she makes the willow shiver in the sun, for maidens who were wont to sit and gaze upon the grass relinquished to their feet. She causes boys to pile new plums and pears on disregarded plate. The maidens taste and stray impassioned in the littering leaves. Part 6. Is there no change of death in paradise? Does ripe fruit never fall? Or do the boughs hang always heavy in that perfect sky, unchanging yet so like our perishing earth, with rivers like our own that seek for seas they never find, the same receding shores that never touch with inarticulate pang? Why set the pair upon those riverbanks, or spice the shores with odors of the plum? Alas, that they should wear our colors there, the silken weavings of our afternoons, and pick the strings of our insipid lutes. Death is the mother of beauty, mystical, within whose burning bosom we devise our earthly mothers, waiting sleeplessly. Part 7. Supple and turbulent, a ring of men shall chant an orgy on a summer morn, their boisterous devotion to the sun, not as a god, but as a god might be, naked among them like a savage source. Their chant shall be a chant of paradise, out of their blood returning to the sky, and in their chant shall enter, voice by voice, the windy lake wherein their Lord delights. The trees like seraphim and echoing hills that choir among themselves long afterward. They shall know well the heavenly fellowship of men that perish, and of summer morn, and whence they came, and whither they shall go. The dew upon their feet shall manifest. Part 8. She hears upon that water without sound a voice that cries, the tomb in Palestine is not the porch of spirits lingering. It is the grave of Jesus where he lay. We live in an old chaos of the sun, or old dependency of day and night, or island solitude, unsponsored, free of that wide water, inescapable. Deer walk upon our mountains, and the quail whistle about us their spontaneous cries. Sweet berries ripen in the wilderness, and in the isolation of the sky. At evening, casual flocks of pigeons make ambiguous undulations as they sink downward to darkness on extended wings. Okay, I don't want to give any sort of extensive commentary on this great masterpiece. I think it's Wallace Stevens' breakthrough poem of modernism, although he writes here in a more romantic style, more related to the blank verse of Wordsworth and Tennyson. You know, I think we can relate it to Wordsworth's preludes, intimations of immortality, and also, you know, some of Tennyson's more metaphysical nature poetry as well. There's also a definite influence of Whitman. There's certainly less influence of the haiku-like imagism that we associate with Wallace Stevens, like the 13, you know, his short imagistic 13 ways of looking at a blackboard and a blackbird and so on. Although the bird imagery, of course, is here. The cockatoo, which in her bedroom, which morphs into swallows and you know, the birds of the fields, and you know, and then the finally the quail on the mountains, and then coming back to the city again, the casual flocks of pigeons. We return to the urban milieu in the final image of the poem. The beautiful image of the casual flocks of pigeons make ambiguous undulations as they sink downward to darkness, you know. And of course, he uses the traditional trope of the carpe diem trope of fruit representing sex, lust, and love and romance, beginning with the oranges in her bedroom, and then the plums and pears, which you know, she has a classic carpe diem interest. She causes boys to pile new plums and pears on disregarded plate. The maidens taste and stray impassioned among the glittering leaves. But the metaphysical aspect of the poem is the she is death, the mother of beauty, you know, because we know we're going to die, and our time and our life is precious. Therefore, the evanescent pleasures of life, the fruit, the flowers, and so on, those are beautiful. and therefore an eternal, deathless afterlife cannot be beautiful. Yeah, it can only be have a superficial, artificial, fake purity, an imitation. In other words, there's a Nietzschean transvaluation here. He's saying that our cultural imagery of the afterlife as a perfect place is actually an imperfect representation of the perfect beauty which can only exist in the finite world of death, of life and death. So that's an interesting transvaluation of values, because, from the Platonic perspective, the immaterial realm, the sort of the heaven of ideal substances, that's the perfectly beautiful world, and our world is only a false or a weak imitation of that. Yeah. So there's a very interesting, transvaluation of values in that consideration of the afterlife. So we have the birds, the fruit, the water, the wide water, which of course is symbolically the water of the river of the underworld, Hades, separating the world of living and the dead, and there's other liquids. Of course, the wide water without sound is emphasized in the first stanza as a refrain. Wide water without sound. The day is like wide water without sound. And of course, that's wide water without. Of course, there is the heavy alliteration, which emphasizes that. And that wide water comes back in the final stanza. Island solitude, unsponsored, free of that wide water, inescapable. So the wide water without sound, the water of separating this life from the afterlife, we understand in the final stanza that wide water, inescapable, is the boundary of death, that death is inescapable. But in our island solitude, this island being Earth, we are unsponsored, that is to say, without God, and free. And because of that, we have free will. We are free to choose our existence. And so, dear walk upon our mountains, we are capable of moving from outdoors into our small world of our small domestic pleasures into the big world of our mountains, and the quail whistle about us their spontaneous cries, and sweet berries ripen in the wilderness and in the isolation of sky. And then that vision, that paradise of nature, we can also experience in our immediate urban world, by looking at casual flocks of pigeons make ambiguous undulations as they sink downward to darkness on extended wings at evening. We can have the same meditation of life and death in our ordinary lives. So, and of course, April is mentioned in section 4, when she says that there is not any haunt of prophecy, nor any old chimera of the grave, neither the golden underground, nor isle melodious where spirits got them home, nor visionary south, nor cloudy palm remote on heaven's hill that has endured as April's green endures. Yeah, so there's a whole series of and an effort of negatives: neither, nor, not, nor, then, and then the positive, as April's green endures, or will endure. So the endure, that's the positive that cancels all those negatives. So let's hope that April's green endures and cancels all those negatives. And Sunday Morning by Wallace Stevens is a poem that changed my life, and I hope it changes your life as well. But even if it doesn't change your life, and it did change my life, it gave me the courage to leave the church that I was born into, absolutely, so to choose life over what I view as a completely blasphemously incorrect interpretation of Christianity as a cult of the dead. For me, the only valid interpretation of Christianity is a life-affirming humanism. I believe that true Christianity is a humanism, not an anti-humanism. I believe any interpretation of religious tradition that valorizes the afterlife over this life is inherently anathema, is inherently incorrect, is inherently anti-humanistic, and is inherently blasphemously wrong. Yeah. We have to, any conception we might have of the afterlife must be completely subsumed and subsidiary to the values of this life. And anything else is bad faith. Okay, but let's, sticking with this world, let's continue with poetry of April. I think it's important for young people to read Sunday Morning by Wallace Stevens and to consider the aspects of their religious upbringing that they need to distance themselves from. So I think I did that, and you should do that, and everyone should do that. And as a process of individuation, you need to move past the collective societal ego structures that you were born into, and then as an adult, you can reconnect in a positive way. But before you can rebuild and reconnect in a positive way, there must be a definitive break. Absolutely. Okay. So now looking again at April in spiritual terms, and also in a kind of in a body metaphysical terms, ones which bring together sort of proto Carpe Diem with like a proto metaphysical approach, is the Canterbury Tales of Chaucer. And obviously I'm not going to read all of it. I'm going to read just the first few lines of the general prologue. And please forgive me, it's been many years since I took my Middle English course, and Pache, the great Oberlin professor Martinez Pizarro, who struggled in vain to get us to read correctly in Middle English. So with my very, very rusty Middle English, I'll read the first few lines of the Canterbury Tales, which gives us an image of April as a month of spiritual renewal after the aridity of winter. All right. Quando aprile with the shorter suitor, the droga of March hath pierced to the root, and bathed every vein in switch liqueur, of which virtue engendered is the fleur. Chanseverus eke with his sweet breath, inspired hath in every halt and haste, the tantria cropus and the young Isana hath in the ram his half course runner, and smaller fowls make in melody, that sleeping all the night with open ye. So pricketh him nature in her courages, than longing folk to go on pilgrimages. Okay, that's enough, because my Middle English declamation is terrible. But well, of course, what Chaucer is telling us is that in April, when there's the renewal of nature in April, after this sort of the sleepy time of March and the end of winter, and when the snow and the ice of March turn into the rain of April, and the rain gets down under the ground to the roots of plants, and they grow and they bloom and burst into bloom, and when the cold northern winds of the winter become the pleasant zephyrs, the western winds of the spring, inspires in every land the crops and the animals coming back to life, and so on. And the youngest son hath in the ram half his course Urona. The sun is moving into the ram, into the sign of Aries in the zodiac. And smaller fowls making melodia, they slip at night with open ye, that we hear birds chirping, at night, before dawn, So all of nature comes back to life. And we as human beings are part of nature. So it says, so pricketh hem natura in her courages, the courage emerges in nature, encouragement, then longing folk to go on pilgrimages. So then human beings, as part of nature, also awaken from their sleepy wintertime hibernation and want to go out to exit the cave of Platonic ignorance and to find wisdom, to go on pilgrimages. So April is the season of pilgrimages, of physical movement and of travel and of spiritual awakening. And hence, that's the setup of the Canterbury Tales. People want to go on pilgrimages at that time in late medieval England, pilgrimages to Canterbury Cathedral. So that's an optimistic and humanistic depiction of April. Humanity as part of nature, nature seeking life, movement, and wisdom after the sleep and the of winter. We'll come back to that in just a moment when we look at Eliot. But as a kind of an intermezzo, I would like to read a short, poignant lyric of 3 quatrains written by Philip Larkin in April of 1948 after the death of his father. And we all know that Philip Larkin had a very abusive situation growing up, and his father was an authoritarian fascist sympathizer. But in this poem, he focuses on the gentle and human side of his father, which he is mourning in the wake of his father's death. Snow in April. And April Sunday brings the snow, making the blossom on the plum trees green, not white. An hour or two, and it will go. Strange that I spend that hour moving between cupboard and cupboard, shifting the store of jam you made of fruit from these same trees. 5 loads, 100 pounds or more than enough for all next summer's teas, which now you will not sit and eat. Behind the glass, underneath the cellophane, remains your final summer, sweet and meaningless, and not to come again. And, well, this poem does not require too much commentary. It's beautiful and moving on the surface, and it has very acute natural observation, that in a normal sunny day, if we look at the blossom on plum trees, they look white to us, but when the actual white of snow, the pure white of snow, lands on that, we see the greenest tinge of the plum blossom, making the blossom of the plum trees green, not white, But of course, it's April, it's spring, an hour or two, it will melt. The snow doesn't stick around. And the loads of jam are symbolic of the heaviness of the being the son of this abusive father, right? 100 pounds or more. And the final summer, he says here, remains your final summer. So, of course, remains has a double meaning. There's the remembrance, the psychological remains, but there's also the remains, the physical remains of the dead person, remains in the sense of funerary remains, So the jam in the cupboard is also symbolically like the urn of funeral ashes, or the grave, or the tomb, in that sense. Remains your final summer, sweet and meaningless, not to come again. So the sweet jam takes on a slightly ghastly or ghoulish, sort of tinge in that sense, because it's not just something to have with tea, but it's the tangible physical connection to the dead person, the dead body. A beautiful and poignant and disturbing. So for April, chilly April Sunday for Larkin is a day of personal grief, and sweet and meaningless and not to come again. Sweet and meaningless, sweet to himself and meaningless, not meaningful to anyone else. The sort of completely private grief, and not to come again. Okay. Our last poem that we're going to read together today is the Wasteland of T.S. Eliot, which is yet another reflection on April and poetry and the transition from winter to April. And Eliot gives his perspective. And so April in Sunday morning is a vision of the positive against the negatives of the visions of the afterlife in Wallace Stevens. April in Larkin is a memento of personal grief. April in Chaucer is a season of renewal and a return to life for all of nature and of spiritual renewal for human beings. So now in the Wasteland of T.S. Eliot, we'll read April as a season of reckoning, of coming to deal with what has been repressed or has been kept in the subconscious mind. We're just going to read purely the poem text of Eliot's Wasteland. We're not going to read the endnotes, but of course the endnotes are an integral part of the text. So when you read the Wasteland of Eliot on the page, you have to read Eliot's endnotes, and then you should read other endnotes separately, because the endnotes create an intertext very much like the intertextual parts of Joyce's Ulysses, and of course the intertextual parts of Finnegans Wake. I think the Wasteland is a definite influence on Finnegans Wake. I mean, I think that at this point Eliot was in deep communion with Joyce. Absolutely, yeah. But since we are reading it out loud, we're just going to read the poetic text. But if you are reading it on the page privately at home, please read the text with Eliot's endnotes, because they form a dynamic commentary, and you really should not read one without the other. So I'm not going to read the epigraph either, since my Greek is not very good, but there's the in translation, the Sibyl, there's the Sibyl of Cumai, saying, asking what do you want, and he says, I want to die. And then he's dedicated for Ezra Pound, Il Miglior Fabbro. So to Ezra Pound, he's the greater craftsman, and that's very tender, because honestly, Pound may have been the greater craftsman, but he was not the greater poet. I mean, if we compare the Wasteland to the cantos, I mean, you can say that Pound's cantos was a response to the Wasteland. The Wasteland is clearly the greater poem. But Eliot didn't, after he converted to Christianity, he disavowed the Wasteland and called it, quote, a rhythmic rumbling. I disagree. The Wasteland is a poem which changed my life. It exposed to me the emptiness of my urban existence, and it made me realize that I needed to get away from New York and move to the country. And I went to Ohio, and then I went out to Colorado, and then I went into the mountains and then traveled all around. The Wasteland helped me. And again, we make a rapprochement. I find myself all these years later back in New York. But it is an urban zeitgeist. It's looking at April from the perspective of someone who is in the city and seeing his urban life as a wasteland, as devoid of enduring meaning. Okay, so part one, the burial of the dead. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dry tubers, Summer surprised us, coming over the Starnbergersee with a shower of rain. We stopped in the colonnade and went on in sunlight into the Hofgarten and drank coffee and talked for an hour. Bin gar kein Russin stam aus Litauen, echt Deutsch. And when we were children, staying at the Archduke's, my cousins, he took me out on a sled, and I was frightened. He said, "Marie, Marie, hold on tight." And down we went. In the mountains, there you feel free. I read much of the night and go south in the winter. What are the roots that clutch, what branches grow out of this stony rubbish? Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images, where the sun beats, and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Only there is shadow under this red rock. Come in under the shadow of this red rock, and I will show you something different from either your shadow at morning striding behind you, or your shadow at evening rising to meet you. I will show you fear and a handful of dust. Frisch weht der Wind der Heimat zu, mein irisch Kind, wo weilest du? You gave me hyacinths a year ago, they called me the hyacinth girl. Yet when we came back, late from the hyacinth garden, your arms full, and your hair wet, I could not speak, and my eyes failed, and I was neither living nor dead, and I knew nothing, looking into the heart of light, the silence. Ode und Leer, das Meer. Madame Sosostris, the famous clairvoyante, had a bad cold, nevertheless is known to be the wisest woman in Europe with a wicked pack of cards. Here, said she, is your card, the drowned Phoenician sailor. Those are pearls that were his eyes. Look! Here is Belladonna, the lady of the rocks, the lady of situations. Here is the man with 3 staves, and here the wheel, and here is the one-eyed merchant. And this card, which is blank, is something he carries on his back, which I am forbidden to see. I do not find the hanged man. Fear, death, by water. I see crowds of people walking around in a ring. Thank you. If you see dear Mrs. Equitone, tell her I bring the horoscope myself. One must be so careful these days. Unreal city, under the brown fog of a winter dawn. A crowd flowed over London Bridge, so many. I had not thought death had undone so many. Sighs, short and infrequent, were exhaled, and each man fixed his eyes before his feet, flowed up the hill and down King William Street to where St. Mary Woolnoth kept the hours, with a dead sound on the final stroke of 9. There I saw one I knew, but I stopped him, saying, "Stetson, you who were with me in the ships at Mylae, that corpse you planted last year in the garden, has it begun to sprout? Will it bloom this year, or has a sudden frost disturbed its bed? Oh, keep the dog far hence, that's friend to man, or with his nails he'll dig it up again. You, hypocrite lecture, mon semblable, mon frère." Part 2, Game of Chess. The chair she sat in, like a burnished throne, glowed upon the marble where the glass, held up by standards wrought with fruited vines, from which a Cupidon peeped out. Another hid his eyes behind his wing, doubled the flames of 7-branched candelabra, reflecting light upon the table as the glitter of her jewels rose to meet it from satin cases poured in rich profusion, in vials of ivory and colored glass. Unstoppered lurked her strange synthetic perfumes, unguent, powdered or liquid, troubled, confused, and drowned the scents and odors, stirred by the air that freshened from the windows. These ascended in fattening the prolonged candle flames, flung their smoke into the laquaria, stirring the pattern on the coffered ceiling. Huge seawood, fed with copper, burned green and orange, framed by the colored stone, by which sad light a carved dolphin swam. Above the antique mantle was displayed, as through a window gave upon the sylvan scene, the change of Philomel by the barbarous king, so rudely forced. Yet there the nightingale fills all the desert with inviolable voice, and still she cried, and the world pursues jug jug, two dirty ears, and other withered stumps of time were told upon the walls. Staring forms leaned out, leaning, hushing, the rooms enclosed. Footsteps shuffled on the stair, under the firelight, under the brush. Her hair, spread out in fiery points, glowed into words, then would be savagely still. My nerves are bad tonight. Yes, bad. Stay with me. Speak to me. Why do you never speak? Speak. What are you thinking of? What thinking? What? I never know what you are thinking. Think. I think we are in Rat's Alley, where the dead men lost their bones. What is that noise? The wind under the door. What is that noise now? What is the wind doing? Nothing. Again. Nothing. Do you know nothing? Do you see nothing? Do you remember nothing? I remember. Those are the pearls that were his eyes. Are you alive or not? Is there nothing in your head? But, oh, that Shakespearean rag. It's so elegant, so intelligent. What shall I do now? What shall I do? I shall rush out as I am, and walk the street with my hair down so. What shall we do tomorrow? What shall we ever do? The hot water at 10, and if it rains, a closed car at 4. And we shall play a game of chess, pressing lidless eyes and waiting for a knock upon the door. When Will's husband got demobbed, I said, I didn't mince my words, I said to her myself, hurry up, please, it's time. Now Albert's coming back, make yourself a bit smart. He'll want to know what you've done with that money he gave you to get yourself some teeth. He did, I was there. You have them all out, they'll get a nice set. He said, I swear I can't bear to look at you, no more I can't, I said. And think of poor Albert, he's been in the army 4 years, he wants a good time. And if you don't give it to him, there's others will, I said. Oh, is there, she said. Something of that, I said. Then I'll know who to thank, she said, and give me a straight look. Hurry up, please, it's time. If you don't like it, you can get on with it, I said. Others can pick and choose if you can't. But if Albert makes off, it won't be for lack of telling. You ought to be ashamed, I said, to look so antique, and her only 31. I can't help it, she said, pulling a long face. It's them pills I took. To bring it off, she said. She's had 5 already, and nearly died at young George. The chemist said it would be all right, but I never been the same. You are a proper fool, I said. Well, if Albert won't leave you alone, there it is, I said. What if you get married for you if you don't want children? Why'd you get married for you if you don't want children? Hurry up, please, it's time. Well, that Sunday Albert was home, and they had a hot gammon. They asked me to dinner to get the beauty of it hot. Hurry up, please, it's time. Hurry up, please, it's time. Good night, Bill. Good night, Lou. Good night, May. Good night. Ta-ta. Good night, good night, good night, ladies. Good night, sweet ladies. Good night, good night. Part 3. The Fire Sermon. The river's tent is broken. The last fingers of leaf clutch and sink into the wet bank. The wind crosses the brown land unheard. The nymphs are departed. Sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song. The river bears no empty bottles, sandwich papers, silk handkerchiefs, cardboard boxes, cigarette ends, or other testimony of summer nights. The nymphs are departed, and their friends, the loitering heirs of city directors, departed, have left no address. By the waters of Leman I sat down and wept. Sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song. Sweet Thames, run softly, for I speak not loud or long. But at my back, in a cold blast, I hear the rattle of the bones, and chuckles spread from ear to ear. A rat crept softly through the vegetation, dragging its slimy belly on the bank, while I was fishing in the dull canal on a winter evening round behind the gas house, musing upon the king my brother's wreck, and on the king my father's death before him, white bodies naked on the low damp ground, and bones cast in a little low dry garret, rattled by the rat's foot only year to year. But at my back from time to time I hear the sounds of horns and motors, which shall bring Sweeney to Mrs. Porter in the spring. Oh, the moon shone bright on Mrs. Porter and on her daughter. They washed their feet in soda water. Oh, et ces voix d'enfants chantant dans la coupole. Twit, 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 jug, 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 jug. So rudely forced, terror. Unreal city, under the brown fog of a winter noon, Mr. Eugenides, the Smyrna merchant, unshaven, with a pocket full of currants, EIF London documents at sight, asked me in demotic French to luncheon at the Cannon Street Hotel, followed by a weekend at the Metropole. At the violet hour, when the eyes and back turn upward from the desk, when the human engine waits like a taxi, throbbing, waiting, I, Tiresias, though blind, throbbing between two lives, old man with wrinkled female breasts, can see at the violet hour, the evening hour that strives homeward and brings the sailor home from sea. The typist home at tea time, clears her breakfast, lights her stove, and lays out food in tins. Out of the window, perilously spread, her drying combination touched by the sun's last rays. On the divan are piled, at night her bed, stockings, slippers, camisoles, and stays. I, Tiresias, old man with wrinkled dugs, perceived the scene and foretold the rest. I, too, awaited the expected guest. He, the young man, carbuncular, arrives, a small house agent's clerk, with one bold stare, one of the low on whom assurance sits as a silk hat on a Bradford millionaire. The time is now propitious as he guesses. The meal is ended, he is bored and tired, endeavors to engage her in caresses, which still are unreproved if undesired. Flushed and decided, he assaults at once. Exploring hands encounter no defense. His vanity requires no response, and makes a welcome of indifference. And I, Tiresias, have forsuffered all, enacted on this same divan or bed. I, who have sat by Thebes below the wall, and walked among the lowest of the dead, bestows one final patronizing kiss, and gropes his way, finding the stairs unlit. She turns and looks a moment in the glass, hardly aware of her departed lover. Her brain allows one half-formed thought to pass. Well, now that's done, I'm glad it's over. When lovely woman stoops to folly and paces about her room again alone, she smooths her hair with an automatic hand and puts a record on the gramophone. This music crept by me upon the waters and along the Strand up Queen Victoria Street. Oh, city, city, I can sometimes hear beside a public bar in Lower Thames Street the public whining of a mandolin, and clatter and a chatter from within. where fishermen lounge at noon, where the walls of Magnus Martyr hold inexplicable splendor of Ionian white gold. The river sweats oil and tar, the barges drift with the turning tide, red sails wide to leeward swing on the heavy spar, the barges wash drifting logs down Greenwich Reach, past the Isle of Dogs. Wea la la lea, wa la la lea la la. Elizabeth and Leicester, beating oars, astern. The stern was formed, a gilded shell, red and gold. The brisk swell rippled both shores. Southwest wind carried downstream the peal of bells, white towers. Wea la la lea, wa la la lea la la. Trams and dusty trees, Highbury bore me. Richmond and Kew undid me. By Richmond I raised my knees supine on the floor of a narrow canoe. My feet are at Moorgate, and my heart under my feet. After the event he wept. He promised a new start. I made no comment. What should I resent? On Margate sands I can connect nothing with nothing. The broken fingernails of dirty hands. My people humble people who expect nothing. La la. To Carthage then I came. Burning, 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 burning. O Lord, thou pluckest me out. O Lord, thou pluckest. Burning. Part 4. Death by Water. Phlebas the Phoenician, a fortnight dead, forgot the cry of gulls and the deep sea swell and the profit and loss. A current under sea picked his bones in whisper. As he rose and fell, he passed the stages of his age and youth, entering the whirlpool. Gentile or Jew, O you who turned the wheel and looked to windward, consider Phlebas, who was once handsome and tall as you. 5. What the thunder said. After the torchlight red on sweaty faces, after the frosty silence in the gardens, after the agony in stony places, the shouting and the crying, prison and palace and reverberation of thunder of spring over distant mountains, he who was living is now dead, and we who were living are now dying with a little patience. Here is no water but only rock, rock and no water and the sandy road, the road winding above among the mountains, which are mountains of rock without water. If there were water, we should stop and drink amongst the rock. One cannot stop or think. Sweat is dry and feet are in the sand. If there were only water amongst the rock, dead mountain mouth of carious teeth that cannot spit, here one can neither stand, nor lie, nor sit. There is not even silence in the mountains, but dry, sterile thunder without rain. There is not even solitude in the mountains, but red, sullen faces sneer and snarl from the doors of mud-cracked houses. If there were water, and no rock, if there were rock, and also water, and water, a spring, a pool among the rock, if there were the sound of water only, not the cicada and the dry grass singing, but the sound of water over a rock, where the hermit thrush sings in the pine trees, drip, drop, drip, drop, 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 drop. But there is no water. Who is the third who walks always beside you? When I count, there are only you and I together, but when I look ahead, up the white road, there is always another one walking beside you, gliding wrapped in a brown mantle, hooded. I do not know whether a man or a woman. But who is that on the other side of you? What is that sound high in the air, murmur of maternal lamentation? Who are those hooded hordes swarming over endless plains, stumbling in cracked earth, ringed by the flat horizon only? What is this city over the mountains, cracks and reforms and bursts in the violet air? Falling towers, Jerusalem, Athens, Alexandria, Vienna, London, unreal. A woman drew her long black hair out tight and fiddled whisper music on those strings, and bats with baby faces in the violet light whistled and beat on their wings and crawled head downward down a blackened wall, and upside down in air were towers tolling reminiscent bells that kept the hours, and voices singing out of empty cisterns and exhausted wells. In this decayed hole among the mountains, in the faint moonlight, the grass is singing over the tumbled graves. About the chapel, there is an empty chapel. Only the wind's home. It has no windows, and the door swings. Dry bones can harm no one. Only a cock stood on the roof tree. Co, rico, rico, in a flash of lightning. Then a damp gust bringing rain. Ganga was sunken, and the limp leaves waited for rain, while the black clouds gathered far distant over Himavant. The jungle crouched, humped in silence. Then spoke the thunder. Da! Datta, what have we given? My friend, blood shaking my heart, the awful daring of a moment's surrender, which an age of prudence can never retract. By this, and this only, we have existed, which is not found, not to be found, in our obituaries, or in memories draped by the beneficent spider, or under seals broken by the lean solicitor in our anterooms. Dayadavam. I have heard the key turn in the door once, and turn only once only. We think of the key, each in his prison. Thinking of the key, each confirms a prison. Only at nightfall, ethereal rumors revive for a moment a broken Coriolanus. Damyata. The boat responded gaily to the hand expert with sail and oar. The sea was calm. Your heart would have responded gaily when invited, beating obedient to controlling hands. I sat upon the shore, fishing with the arid plain behind me. Shall I at least set my lands in order? London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. Poi sa cose nel fuoco che li affina quando fiammo ti chelidon. Oh, swallow, swallow, the plans d'Aquitana la tua aboli. These fragments I have shored against my ruins. Why then I'll fit you. Hieronymo's mad again. Datta, Dayadva, Damyata, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay. Well, I think that's enough for now. So April is the month of the burial of the dead. That's the month where we must bring out, where we must front what we have ignored. So I think Eliot does that masterfully in The Wasteland. Again, that's simply the poetic text, the recitation text, the verbal text, and the intertext is the printed text, which includes all of Eliot's notes, which are sort of the diary of a madman, sort of his persona as a crazy professor making commentary. So we need to read the poem and the commentary together. Another example of that sort of that double text is Pale Fire by Nabokov, another great masterpiece, and of course the sections of certain sections of Ulysses, but especially, absolutely, the greatest example of that ever is Finnegan's Wake of James Joyce. You know, where there's text and intertext are constantly informing each other and transforming each other. Okay, well, I think there's enough to chew on there. April, a chilly April Sunday in poetry. April is Poetry Month. We'll be coming back to that next week when we celebrate the sonnets of Shakespeare, as we will examine through the lens of the commentary of the great Helen Fendler. And we will try to read all of the sonnets in sequence, if my physical stamina holds out, in one session. If not, we'll break it into a couple of sessions. So until we meet next time, have a great week. Be healthy, be well, enjoy springtime, wherever you are. And this has been Art is the Church of God the Creator, with me, Gregory Muna, a.k.a. Master Moo.